Okay, hello. Welcome everyone. My name is Jay Markert, or known as Jame on some circles, and I'm here with Maria Owl. Hi, Maria. Good to see you. Welcome everyone. And I'm very excited to be hosting you and to host what I feel like is a real significant conversation. So the title of this webinar is Sacred Future Now, Authentic Leadership and Midwifing the New Earth. And we're hosting Maria Christina Owl, as a guest. And Maria, it's really good to connect with you again in this virtual kind of way. How are you doing this afternoon?
Doing great. Thank you, Jay. Yeah, it is. This is fun. This is fun. I feel like a collaboration has been in the works between us for like 10 years. So happy to be here with you.
Yeah, it's been a long time. I first met Maria at New College of California, North Bay campus, Culture, Ecology, and Sustainable Communities, kind of a rare degree program.
Yes.
And Maria was an instructor in the different concentrations. They had eco-dwelling and natural building. And Maria was an instructor at the consciousness, healing, and ecology part of New College. So I've known Maria since back then. And it's been really great to kind of watch you really kind of grow and blossom over the years. Now, you know, being an international speaker and spiritual mentor, ceremonial leader. I know you've been doing workshops all over the place in Israel, New Zealand, Canada, around the US. And also that you have a forthcoming book, which is exciting, The Great Mother Transmissions, Midwifing the New Earth. And now you also have founded your own school, Sacred Future School, in 2012, which is sounds like offers some really amazing programs about kind of grounding, you know, training for leaders and healers, kind of like a kind of train the trainer, empower the healer type of school. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. Yeah, it's good stuff.
Yeah. Well, so let's just dive right in about this topic, Sacred Future Now, Authentic Leadership and Midwifing the New Earth. So could we start a little bit by just like, what does that title mean to you? Like, let's kind of put some scope around what this topic is.
Yeah, that's a good way to start. I want to also acknowledge this beautiful fly friend that's with me today and is hovering like around my head and landing on my hair and forehead. So I'm like completely inclusive, you know, other than human beings included in this webinar. So if the fly is with us, then the fly is with us, and welcome to the fly. Yeah, I think I'm not the only one that's kind of feeling this urgency right now with what's happening with the planet and consciousness, really. It feels to me, and has been feeling, like there has been an acceleration process in my own opening of my consciousness. And throughout the decades, you know, my students and my colleagues are all kind of reporting the same thing, that there's this feeling of a pressure to evolve and to step into more of like a creator consciousness like mode, rather than a follower place where we've been for so many generations on the planet. And it happens to coincide right now when we're facing these very critical, you know, critical like climate and environmental changes. And then, you know, it's like witnessing what's happening with the global politics is fascinating as well. So it seems on many levels we're kind of like entering into this peak moment for our planet. And if that is so, then wouldn't it be wonderful if we chose to be awake for that, if we chose to participate, if we chose to co-create what is going to happen next? And so the work that I do is really to empower people to know that they really do have an impact on what happens next. on the future that we'll be living in, and the power of our thoughts, of our energy, of our intentions, and how can we do our own work to become present, authentic, grounded, clear, empowered, so that we can really direct our energy and thoughts and intention in a very focused way with others. Because it's always more powerful when we do this more than one person, right? In larger groups, like the permaculture convergence, for example. We're all visioning a future Earth that we desire, and we need more and more and more gatherings like this, with times that we're focusing and directing our consciousness in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. We certainly have our work cut out for us, just taking a look at what's happening around the planet right now. I think sometimes can be a little overwhelming, and bring up a lot of grief when you're just looking at what's happening with ecosystems destruction and species extinction. It can be a little overwhelming. So we certainly do have our work cut out for us. All of us. I mean, it's really, we want that. We need to get ourselves empowered and be at our best game here, so we can help steward this new Earth emerging. Absolutely. So, well, tell me a little more. How did you get into this kind of work? You're more, a healer, a psychic medium, a channel, and I'd love to talk to you more about that too. But how did you end up getting into this kind of work of training leaders from there to here?
Right. Yeah, sure. For me, it was a journey of, like, as a healer, I would go through and seek out teachers and modalities to hone my craft and open my gifts, my intuitive gifts, etc. So a lot of trainings and a lot of seeking in that way, and therefore finding myself in a lot of spiritual circles, a lot of educational circles, academic circles, and what I found is that across the board, I was witnessing that there's a lot of shadow energy in the leadership of groups. And whether that was like a 3-day ritual or workshop, or a 2.5-year-long graduate program, there's always this kind of like tricky, sticky place where human beings, when we interface with power, when we interface with leadership and how much influence we can have over other people, we get really tempted to misuse power. And we can easily, with our egos, we can easily validate or justify our decisions on how to wield our power. And unfortunately, what I witnessed over and over again is that very good people in leadership roles were misusing their power in unconscious ways, and their egos would eventually kind of convince them that they were right, and they ended up just perpetuating the paradigm of entrenched duality, right and wrong and good and bad, and that very entrenched kind of judgment field that we are all kind of wanting to grow out of. And I was personally harmed by a series of different spiritual teachers that I had over the decades. So that's what really, I became pretty committed to shifting things in the field of leadership. And I started getting really curious about, well, what does it take to really be a grounded, authentic leader? And how do we really work with our egos? And what is humility? What actually is power? And so I kind of dove into these really deep inquiries around these questions, and continued to just do my own work of self-exploration. And one of the things that I discovered, and that I teach my students, and that I think is the most important thing is that as leaders or anyone in a position of influence, that unless we truly know ourselves and are willing to truly know ourselves, we can't really know who another person is or who the group that we're serving is or the community we're serving. And so, like, if we never really turn the gaze inward and get really radically honest with our own shadow and with our own ego and our own weaknesses, then those weaknesses and shadow pieces are going to constantly be projected onto, the community we're working with or the people that we desire to serve. So we're not seeing them clearly. So how can we truly serve them? And so what I realized is that leadership and self-awareness go hand in hand. And I think that that's really the, like, across the board, when you look at, the obvious examples of leadership in the world, the political leaders, the corporate leaders, etc. This is the piece that's missing. This piece of really getting courageous and wanting to know who you are and what you are as a human being and as a being, as a spiritual being, as an emotional being, and vibration, and as a soul, as a multidimensional being. Are we willing to kind of look at the places we've been unconscious and maybe unwilling, maybe we didn't know it, but we harm people? Are we willing to, to take like atonement or something, make amends? Are we willing to forgive ourselves for ways that we feel weak and not good enough, or etc.? And so that's where, like, the leadership and the spirituality and the healing work really end up coming together. And I don't see them as separate at all now in that way.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, I love hearing that. I think when a lot of people in more corporate world, or when you think about leadership, that there's kind of a real overly perhaps masculine patriarchal approach to it, that's thinking leadership is about perfection, about upping your skill set to command and conquer and be more efficient and run better meetings and become a better expert, and just kind of really frontal lobe, moving forward, agenda driven, profit driven. When you think of leadership, think of, like, what is self mastery, and it sounds like you're kind of coming at it from a whole different approach of, like, oh no, leadership is actually how you become the most effective leader, is to really kind of turn the mirror back in on yourself and do that inner work and get out of your own way and cultivate it from a whole different, much more kind of feminine approach. So just kind of reflecting back to you what I heard about that. So that's absolutely wonderful. Well, tell us more about that. Your school and your program you run is called Transformational Leadership. So tell me, I'd love to hear more about what that means for you, or particularly if, what are some of those kinds of processes, and what can people take away who are on this call right now listening, or will be watching the recording, when it's just like presencing everyone who's here and everyone who's interested in this field and everyone who is really seeing what's happening and wanting, deep down in their soul to step up into their higher selves so they can make more of an impact. What are some kind of specific things? That was a big question, but
yeah. And it's really like a unique journey for each person. My journey looked a very specific way as far as my development. For me personally, my ancestors are a really huge deal for me. And I have a very strong connection with my ancestors, and I really tend to that relationship. A lot of people, enter into a more spiritual connection with leadership through meditation and mindfulness. And so everybody's journey is going to be different. But I think that the bottom line is this willingness to initiate. And I believe that leadership And sacred leadership is an initiation process. Like, it's something that when you feel ready to truly, truly serve and be in service to others rather than service to self, then there's like an initiation process that your soul, like your higher self, your spirit, whatever you call it, will begin to lead you through. And it's really a purification process for the ego. It's a very humbling process. And it's also a process of truly like opening to what you really came here to do, what you were born to do, how to fulfill your full potential here, you know, as an incarnate spirit soul in a body at this time. And so the school, like the transformational leadership program, is actually designed as 17 gateways that our students walk through, and each gateway is another spiritual lens to look at your relationship to power and leadership through, and to learn more about yourself, integrate what you discover, release what doesn't serve anymore, and then you step through the next threshold into the next gateway. And all of this we call a soul initiation journey. And I'm a mentor of this journey, right? I might have been there. I might have done my own initiation journey myself, but I'm not going to tell you how your journey is going to go. You know, I'm not going to impose a dogma or a belief system onto you, because I know that the way that you're going to serve the best is by being authentic, by knowing how to listen to your own intuition, by knowing how to connect with your higher self and your multidimensional consciousness to guide you as the best leader, healer, you know, whoever you are in the world, to bring your gifts out in the purest, most effective way. So that's transformational leadership. It's really like you're going to transform, and then you're going to graduate with an even greater ability to hold that deep transformation in others. So our students are really they're coming in either from a place of already being somebody holding a sacred space for group work, transformational work, or they're coming in desiring to step into that kind of leadership. I've been a ritual, like ceremonial leader for a long time, 17 plus years. And so, you know, there's leadership in the business world. There's leadership in many different realms. And then when it comes to leadership, and when you're tending to people's psyches, emotional bodies, and spirits, there's this whole other aspect that is almost required to be present. And it's kind of like the inner tracker, you know. You have to be able to, when you're holding that sacred transformational space for others, you have to be able to track their shadow, their, you know, like, even like they come into the room and they show up at ritual, and what ancestors are right behind them and what entities might be possessing them. Like, there's this whole other realm, like, that's invisible, that ceremonial leader has to be tracking and watching and creating a really solid, you know, energetic setup, you know, for the space for purification to happen, or for healing to happen, for wholeness to happen. So yeah, so this is, it's really, you know, something that our ancestors have been involved with for so long, is this soul initiation journey. And I think that our initiation rites, obviously, like, we've really lost them, you know, not just lost the level of the coming into adulthood initiation rites, which we all have heard about and are familiar with. And hopefully there's some semblance of something in your life that happened for you as you stepped into more responsibility as an adult. But there's also this other level of initiation of people when they step into their medicine, when they step onto their soul mission, when they're ready to be accountable as a fully awake member of their society, multidimensionally. And there's an initiation process that happens at that place. And I've worked with a lot of traditional Native cultures around the world. And I've talked to many of these elders, teachers, healers, medicine people about their initiation rites. And I've heard some really interesting stories, like personal stories from them about what happened for them that let them know that it was time to initiate into their medicine and into the maturity of a medicine carrier. And I think that each of us, if we want to know what that is, if we're listening, that we'll feel it for ourselves, what that is, that call to initiate. And it's really like, are we willing to hear the call and answer the call?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Oh, I love it. I love this kind of work. It's just so absolutely needed right now. I mean, there's so many people at least in this country, but all over the world that really we've not had that village and that community, those, grandfather, grandmother, aunts, uncles that are like, facilitate that initiation. It's like the initiation in America is like you get your driver's license, or you turn 21 and you go get wasted. It's like an initiation. Or perhaps in a lot of our culture, psychedelic drugs have been really stepping into performing that initiation for some kind of people, and but oftentimes just not done in the kind of way of depth and care of the kind of stuff that you're talking about. So thank you so much for kind of holding that space and being that guide for people. I'm kind of seeing it. It's so kind of, I'm picturing it in my mind as like it's like it's completely, there's structure, but it's completely unstructured, because it's not like you have, like you said, no kind of dogma, no kind of, this is the, even if it's a medicine wheel with different colors and different directions, it's more of like just a kind of peeling back the onion to seeing what's there. So I'm curious, what more kinds of stories that you have from the people that you've worked with, from kind of doing some of that work? That's one question. And another is, I'm really more curious about some of these like 17 gateways. I don't know if you can a little more. I mean, I can think of, rites of passage and all kinds of different things, but 17 gateways. And I'm just curious about, you could give a little more info about some of that.
Sure. Yeah. The 17 gateways is really like, we call it like the soul initiation gateways. And at each one, you get to look in the mirror and face a part of yourself. And so each gateway is a step into knowing yourself even more and even more and even more, and letting go more and more of the things that don't serve you, the patterns, the structures, the agendas of other people, the responsibilities or obligations to others that are really outmoded and aren't serving you anymore. And so through the 17 gateways, our students are developing themselves as developing their intuitive, innate gifts. So we actually are following this this developmental path that begins with the earth and grounding and embodiment, and then we move up into the chakras. So there's a gateway for each of the chakras. So when we're in the first chakra and the gateway about the secure leader, here we are in the first chakra, secure leader. This is all about looking at security from a lens of leadership, as well as from the lens of what needs to be cleared so you can be fully awake and present in your first chakra in the world. And I've seen across the board, it seems that the first chakra is undermined for a lot of, especially Western people.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know who we are. We don't know where we belong. We often feel that we don't belong anywhere, especially if you're raised with a multiracial family or different religion or spiritual beliefs or atheism. Like there's a, like an duality in your family, belief systems or race. There can be this very prevalent, like, I don't know where I belong. And then you get that even more from the culture, going to school or, and through advertising. And so this is where the patterns of like addiction begin, in that root chakra. I don't know who I am in my society. And I'm born into this world expecting to be in a village, expecting to have, my soul song sung to me, expecting to be put through initiation rites, expecting to be singing around a fire with my elders, and you don't get any of that. We're kind of like this shocking awakening into this insane kind of culture that's really removed from the life-giving core needs being met. So that's an example. That's a gateway, right? We dive into all of that. We help people to unplug from the dominant paradigm that is making people feel insane and sick. And we help them to come to this kind of emptiness where they then begin to grow themselves authentically from their own design. Who do I want to be in the world? Who am I truly? Let me look into the reflection of nature. Those people on the call who have done Vision Quest. I led Vision Quest for 12 years. Like, that's an example of a soul initiation process. Looking in the mirror of nature and having that opportunity to see something really different about who you are and what you're all about. And so, the second chakra, the third chakra, all the way up, we go through these gateways to the seventh chakra, to the eighth chakra, when we go into the inner polarities of the masculine, feminine polar energies within us, or the, whatever, that's just one way of calling the inner polarities, masculine, feminine. We look at timelines, we look at past lives, we look at karma, and then we go into creator consciousness and our genetics, and we start to look at our multidimensional selves. So by the time we get into the 7th, 8th, 9th month of the program, we're really looking at who we are as multidimensional beings in parallel realities, in quantum physics, and universal law. So in a way, it gives people an opportunity to completely restructure themselves and know themselves as a human being, know themselves as a member of community and village, know themselves as, as a mentor and leader in their community, and then ancestrally in deep time, and then multidimensionally. So this kind of blossoming into a fuller knowing of who they are.
Wow, beautiful.
Yeah. There's a lot of skill development. Like I'm like the teacher of the skills, but the initiation happens because of them, because of their willingness. They're stepping up, they're choosing it over and over and over again.
Oh, sounds potent. If only everyone had this kind of opportunity since they were
right.
5 or like in grade school or high school. It's kind of like, I always think everyone should take a permaculture design certification.
Yeah.
Just be like what you want. You take it in high school, and that kind of just whole systems framework is just crucial to realizing the interconnected interdependence of life and how to flow with it. And this kind of thing, absolutely, as well. Kind of like what Master Yoda says in Star Wars, right? You must unlearn what you have learned.
It's truer than ever before. It's so true. I want to just say, I met this amazing man, this soul brother on the big island of Hawaii. He's from Tonga, and he's a traditional carver. And he was saying, just speaking of, like you mentioned, everybody having a permaculture certification. I got 2 of them in my 20s.
Mm-hmm.
And so here's this man from Tonga. He grew up his whole youth, adolescence in Tonga, right, in the 70s and 80s, before he moved to New Zealand and learned his craft of carving. And he said that by the age of 8 years old, every child native to Tonga knew how to feed their family through fishing. They knew how to build a house, and they knew how to farm and feed their family through farming. By the time they're 8 years old, they have those skills. And that just like really struck me. And he really grew up. He's like, he actually ended up marrying. He went to college in the United States and married a Diné woman who's part Diné and part another Pueblo community there. And she's never seen like an actual functioning in the continuum earth-based culture before, growing up on the Diné reservation with all the influence from America, right? And so he's now moving his wife and 4 children from the Big Island back to Tonga. Here we are in 2018.
Mm-hmm.
And he's telling her, like, you know, it's going to be really shocking because people live in their traditional ways still there. They dress traditionally, they spearfish, you know, traditionally, and they aren't performing for tourists. This is really their life, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And she's really scared about that. She's like, oh my God, are they going to have a Walmart? No, they don't have a Walmart.
Mm-hmm.
But that's like, I feel like our consciousness is split. Many of us in the modern kind of Western world, we are split like that in our consciousness. If we didn't grow up with earth-based ways, even if we did, you know, it's like there is this growing kind of chasm between what we know is sane and the insanity that we've been, that has co-opted, you know, our reality and what we, you know, that we've been conditioned in to think is normal. And so how do we heal that divide without making anything right or wrong or good or bad, and going into the duality to solve the problem of that split?
Mm-hmm.
How do we actually choose a whole different level of consciousness to heal it from? And how do we open up into that consciousness? So this is where we work with the ritual. This is where we work with like the plant medicines. This is where we work with spiritual teachers who can, you know, help us get into that brainwave state to open the portal within our own being, so we can encounter our unified consciousness and have that template and have that, you know, an anchor in that vibration, that higher bandwidth into this split psyche place, right? Yeah. And that's how we create the new earth, right? That's the earth that will be, like, I believe that earth will be born inevitably no matter what. Like, it is coming. We can participate and be preemptive in our self-work and our, you know, our self-healing and work. We can consciously participate. We can choose it and move toward it. Or we can remain in kind of the trauma triangle of perpetrator, victim, savior.
The trauma triangle, huh?
Trauma triangle.
Perpetrator,
victim, savior.
Yeah.
We can perceive things from that split way, and it will. And when the real shifts start to happen in our solar system, with the solar flares, etc., all the things that are actually electromagnetically happening in the solar system and on the planet and with our climate, as these things continue to unfold, it can feel like, for the ones entrenched in the duality, it can feel like we're a victim of this birthing new earth. And we can't participate in it from an awake place. It's going to feel very traumatizing, you know? And so it's like, how can we wake up? Like when there is a death, there's a birth embedded in that death, right? Whenever there's a birth, there's death embedded in that birth. And so what is it to be wide awake and choose to be awake and fully participating in the death as it's happening and feel everything that's coming up for us, and to still stay and to still witness and to still feel it all and to say yes, yes to this death, yes, yes to whatever this is. I'm willing to know this experience. And to face the death with consciousness allows a very awake and conscious birth to happen. You know, there's no, so many, this is really evident in like relationships. When two people split up, you know, there can be a lot of unconsciousness and hurt feelings and unresolved issues in that breakup. And then that person will take that unconsciousness and those projections and that wounding right into the beginning of their next relationship. So here we are in a much grander scale. We look at the earth is going through a death and a birth. And therefore, all of us are, right? So what kind of birth do you want? And I have a friend who is really committed to debunking that, like, actual childbirth is painful and that labor is painful. She said that most of the pain of labor and childbirth is due to our belief that it's going to be painful and our conditioning around the suffering and pain of childbirth. And that if you watch indigenous cultures that are still in the continuum, there is stress, sure. You know, there is effort, yes. There's engagement in that way. It's very intense. Intensity, yes. Is it painful? No. There's a choice we make. It's going to be pain, right? We create our own suffering. We create the discomfort and we generate our own fear, right? So this, like, I know the work that you do and the work that I do is all about being proactive, being awake, and engaging with, like, more joy, more excitement, more curiosity. You know, we don't have to suffer through this, through our transformations. We can be present in the intensity. We can be present for any discomfort, but we don't have to suffer and feel like isolated, alone, you know, and all that accompanies that.
Words of wisdom there for sure. Let me kind of not necessarily change the subject a bit, but just go a little bit deeper down that rabbit hole about, like, accessing other states of consciousness that you were talking about, right? Getting into that, like, call it the shamanic realm, call it being a psychic, being a medium, being a channel, you know, being like, accessing that level of consciousness. I know that you've done and do a lot of that. Like, you were telling me you just went to the Institute of Noetic Sciences International Consciousness and Healing Conference, right? Which is, I don't know if people know that place, but they are an organization that's looking at bringing in scientific understanding to mystical experience. I used to know them well too, and lived at their site in Petaluma for 9 months. We were doing permaculture projects there.
Nice.
Great. So I understand you were there at this conference, which is amazing, and you did a live channeling at this conference in front of 700 people, mostly scientists. I'm just curious, you know, what that was like for you specifically, or what it's like to just, you know, get into that kind of space, or how to go about doing it. Is this something anyone you think can learn how to do to access those kinds of spaces? But I don't know. You want to share more?
Sure.
about how was the ions thing for you? I'm just trying to envision you in front of 700 people channeling. Like
I know.
what
It was
what were you
wild.
channeling? What was the
It it was so wild. Like never in my wild, I never thought that would, you know, in my life, this was not something I ever thought would be happening for me in my life.
yeah? So
Yeah.
how did that end up happening, or what? They're
Yeah,
just
like they invited me to come and be a presenter with their Helene Wabe. She is the director of the research department on channeling that she actually founded there at IONS. And she's also the director of the science department there in general at IONS. And so the conference, it was at the Oakland Marriott Convention Center. And so people were there from all over the world. We had incredible presenters. And so the thing with this conference is they paired up a scientist with a practitioner and they presented together, like back to back in the same around the same topic. So we were in the afternoon general sessions. We were on first of 3 presenters, 3 topics. And so Helene was up there and she did her PowerPoint presentation. She told the audience all of her research about channeling and mediumship that she'd been doing, you know, like with subjects who had electrodes all over their head and the brain waves and you know, really fascinating. She's from a long line of mediums herself, and she's Palestinian. Her whole family are like mediums. And so then I was the practitioner, right? So she did her 15-minute talk. She introduced me. So I went on stage with my husband, Dwayne, both barefoot. And he had his hand on my shoulder. So he was like my grounding rod. That was his job, to just ground me. And so I just stood there and I had this feeling of, I was nervous, you know, and I've been doing like invocations and prayer, you know, to clear myself. I'm devoted to like being a clear channel. I'm not going to channel anything that's not accurate, that's not in alignment with the highest good for all, you know. And so I've been channeling this higher vibrational presence that I call the Great Mother for the last year, that I feel really so overjoyed about it, that I'm finally at this place in my own development to be able to access this higher dimensional frequency. And so she came through on the stage and she's like, she told the audience, will you please make a tone because my vessel is nervous and it's harder for us to remain in the vessel if the vessel is nervous. So she had everybody in the audience hold a tone, while my body did too. I was toning too. Once that tone was complete, she just started talking to them. And she talked straight through 13 minutes. My eyes were, so the timer at the foot of the stage was counting down, but I wasn't aware of it at all. But she was. So she perfectly went into closing summary, ended at exactly the time that I had, which was amazing. And the message that was coming through to the audience was about living 100% in your body. It was about embodiment. And it was about how most of us actually don't live in our bodies 100%, and how there are a lot of reasons why we do this. Mostly trauma and past wounding, you know, and a fear of our emotions. And she likened it to living half in and half out of your physical house. Like, are you going to go home and stand half outside your front door and half in your house at the front door and live that way? No, you can't. That's impossible. You know, well, it's also detrimental to live half in and out of your physical bodies. But most people aren't fully in all the time. And what would it be to choose that? So she made a lot of good points. And after the session, I ended up over the next 2 days of the conference talking to a lot of people who were really impacted by it, almost everybody I spoke with, the minute they would stand in front of me would just start bawling, like crying. And that's like, you know, I'm a loving person, but for me, that's the great mother presence. Brings people to tears because of her compassion. So, but you know, like getting to this place where I am now with this ability and this gift is what we also train our students in, was a long, hard road for me. Like I was the kid who grew up, and to put it, I guess just to put it in terms that maybe some people will understand, maybe some won't, but I was attacked a lot on the astral planes as a child and growing up. So I was constantly battling dark entities and negative things out of my body, because I was a medium, but I didn't know it. And I thought this was happening to everybody, but it wasn't. And so like I would go to sleep at night and something would try to get into my body and I'd have to fight it out and claim my body space again. And this was like ongoing, constantly, year after year after year of my life, until I started developing myself as a healer and really cleared a lot of the wounding and the fear energy out of my system from the abuse that was happening in my family. I grew up in a very abusive, violent, alcoholic family. So there was a lot of darkness and a lot of negativity that made it even harder to avoid negative entities who were feeding off all that fear. So I'm kind of naming this whole complex right now that people who are out of control mediums will know what I'm talking about. Like they'll get it immediately. Like, oh, that's what I went through. So most of my students and clients are people who are out of control mediums, who have possessions or who feel like they're being stalked by something. And so Dwayne and I help people to clear these things and to come into full embodiment and empowerment with their gift and not feel out of control and like a victim anymore of the gift. Yeah, it's a very like paranormal reality I've always lived in. And I think I want to normalize it for people. I think that most of us have had paranormal experiences and that we all chant, like Buckminster Fuller. If you ever look at his story, he's a channel. Rudolf Steiner, he's a channel. Like there's so many people who brought through Thomas Edison in his own words, names that these ideas came through him, and he can't claim that they came from him, his invention, right? So we all have the ability to channel, and often we're channeling the information and wisdom of our own higher selves. But we're also, you know, many like thought leaders and visionaries are channeling a more universal wisdom. And it's a collective wisdom. So here's Rupert Sheldrake with the morphogenic fields, right? Yes, develop the gift. Like, wonderful. Let's do it and use it for good.
Wonderful. Well, that's very inspiring to hear that you feel like that kind of access to those states of consciousness are, you know, really available to everyone. That maybe some people are kind of born with a natural kind of thing, and that really it's kind of right there for us. And it's actually, perhaps maybe you would say, I would say so, and I think you were saying at the beginning of the call, it's almost like it's really accelerating. Like it's, you know, kind of like it's becoming more opening. There's like this grand like awakening of light leaders across the planet kind of happening that, like you said, are kind of out of control mediums, or just, you know, really have to learn how they can, you know, how they can hone their powers. It's almost like, not to relate it to like the X-Men, but, you know, like,
no, totally.
yeah, like the return of the sacred powers back to the children of Earth who will rise up and balance the planet again. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so funny, but it's really like that. You know, I look at X-Men and different movies that are made like that, and I'm like, that is so much more real than people know.
Yeah. Mm. Great. Well, thank you so much, Maria. We only have about 10 minutes left, and I want to, if anyone is in the room, by the way, and has a specific question for Maria, feel free. You can put that in the chat, and we can maybe have some time for some questions right now. And I want to give you the opportunity. Well, actually, I should mention to everyone, just speaking of the Great Mother and your story, that you are offering to everyone who signed up for this webinar a free gift, which is the your ebook download. Do you want to say a little more about what that is?
Yes, yeah.
Authentic Leadership and the 7 Phases of Safe and Effective Ritual.
Yes.
Anyone?
This was
cool. But
yeah, it's amazing. I put it together for my students when I first started the Transformational Leadership Program. So it's kind of like their little text guidebook. That's when the program was more focused on helping people develop themselves as ceremonial and ritual earth-based leaders, which isn't the focus anymore. Now it's more of the intuitive healing development. So this guidebook is basically like the 7 phases of how to lead safe and effective earth-based ritual, like how to prepare yourself and your participants, like really talking about invocation and the guides that you're working with. Like you need to have a really solid, clean, clear relationship with the invisible world guides that you're invoking before you just generally invoke, right? And so the dangers of not doing that, like in a good way, and things I've seen. And then like how to shift the brain waves so transformation can happen. So what kind of things do we do in ritual setting and transformational settings to help shift the brain waves to open ourselves as portals so that intervention can come through from our higher selves, our universal vibrations, the spiritual realms of love light. And then how to close that, how to interpret the experience on the other side. So this is really like a blueprint or template, my formula of a global ritual and ritual flow that is safe and effective. And if you insert your own passion and serve your community with this template, you can use it with anything, and it will be safe and effective. So that is what I love to offer everyone for free. It's also in our Sacred Future store for $11.11. So it is for sale there beyond this moment, but I want you guys to have a free copy. And then I also have a free downloadable ebook called The Great Mother Transmissions that is on the Sacred Future store as well. And this is just the first 3 chapters of my larger book that's coming out next year called The Great Mother Transmissions, Midwifing the New Earth.
Great. Thank you so much for that. I really love the title. I'm thinking of, that classic book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Yeah. It's just more like, it's like the kind of feminine alternative, the 7 Phases. Awesome. I love it. Thank you for that. People that are on the webinar, you can actually click on, you should see on the right part of the screen, you can click on that link right there to get the Great Mother Transmissions ebook. And sounds awesome. I look forward. I will definitely read that book. Let me know when it's coming out. So thank you. Thank you for that offer. And I also want to, you had another offer as well for people that might be more interested in doing some more advanced training with you with your 6-month, 9-month kind of program. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that for people that might be interested?
Yeah, I would love to. And this is really for the people who are feeling like a light bulb going off around the soul initiation. You know, like, oh, I've been getting that call from my soul. I do feel like it's time for me to initiate and step even more into my leadership, into like I'm ready to step into more honesty around myself. I'm ready to unplug from dominant paradigm with a solid support system of mentors around me holding that space for me. So I'm ready for that 9-month process of walking through those 17 gateways. So if that's the case, if you're one of those people having that like, like that might be the perfect aligned fit for me, then because we actually began the current cohort, wave 5, we call them waves. So wave 5 began 2 weeks ago. And so we're still in introduction orientation mode, which is still a really easy place to hop on board with the current wave. So if anybody is feeling like, this is what I've been looking for, or if you're interested in perhaps jumping into wave 6 that will begin in March, go ahead and reach out to me, and we can set up a call, and I can answer your questions, and we can talk about what this is for you. Like, what would this journey be for you? What is the time commitment? What is the tuition? And if you are interested, what I'm offering to Jay's community is a waiving of the deposit of the tuition, which is $800. So anybody who does enroll from this community watching this webinar, we're actually extending that discounted tuition rate.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much for that. That's a very generous offer, and to have a one-on-one call with people that might be interested. Sounds like an awesome program. I would absolutely love to do it. And does it start, so it's cohorts, it starts kind of every year in the around this time, kind of August?
Yeah, it does have a very specific start time. It's not the same time every year because it really varies on Dwayne and I. We travel a lot around globally, and so it depends on so they stagger when they start. Okay. The next one will start in around March next year, and it is an online classroom. It's an online community, online classroom hub. Like, it's all contained in one place. Where there's video classes, there's audio meditations and trainings. Mentors are engaging with you through dialoguing. And then there's one-to-one calls with me for training and more honing in, recalibrating your energy body type of work with me. And then we have 3 big retreats at the beginning, middle, and end of that 9 months. And so for this wave, we're meeting in Shasta for our first retreat. And then we're in the Big Island of Hawaii in January for the 2nd retreat. And then we're back in California for the 3rd retreat in April for graduation. And graduates will receive a Foundations of Intuitive Healing certification.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being a pioneer, offering this kind of work. So needed and so transformational. Thank you. I mean, really, there's not many places that there's like this kind of priestess type training. Priestess, shamanic connection. Awesome. And yeah, if people click on the link, that goes right to the call, or your school again is Sacred Futures, right? Did I get it? sacredfutures.com.org?
Yeah, not plural.
Not plural. Sacredfuture.org is the name of your school. And I know for people that are in the area locally here in Northern California, there's a couple things you have coming up in person, like you're doing a grief ritual. Also, if you want to, for people that are in the Northern California area, Maria is going to be doing a half-day long, 4-hour ritual workshop on midwifing the new earth before the Northern California Permaculture Convergence, which is happening the first weekend in October, on that Thursday, October 5th, I believe. So that'll be awesome. So I know that's one place that you're coming up. There's more info on that at permacultureconvergence.com. Or what else do you have coming up for in-person events? You're doing a grief ritual of some kind.
Saturday, yeah, this Saturday.
Oh, it's coming up quick.
Rosa, yeah. And that is on the website, sacredfuture.org. And there's a calendar page. If you scroll down from the calendar menu button, you'll see a grief ritual button there. So yeah, that's going to be at Masonic Hall in downtown Santa Rosa from 10 to 7. And registration is on our website. Yes.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Well, we're about at our hour, and I also did notice that a few people did put in some questions. Would you want to stick on another 5 minutes and maybe do one of them or
I'd
something?
love to. Yeah, sure.
Okay, great. Well, let's. You can probably see in the chat room too. I can just read them. A couple good questions here from Lotus, from Crystal. Crystal is asking about what changes are happening in the economy and our transformation to more feminine systems of exchange, and why is it important for people to heal their trauma around money?
So important.
Any thoughts about that?
Yeah. This has been a huge inquiry for me because of being a healer and being a really highly sensitive person, energetically and spiritually. And so I've always been on the path of, really struggling with money, because in my kind of starseed memory, like I'm not from realms where there's money and power over paradise, right? I remember a very different reality. And so for those of us who kind of come from that place, it's hard for us to function in a world that oppresses, that uses money for manipulation, that money gets so interwoven with our self-esteem and our physical health even. Oh, my bank account's empty. I feel physically less energy, like it's correlated to our life force energy. And so the first thing with our students, we work with this, we uncouple money from your physical health, from your life force energy. And we also uncouple money from trauma stories. And so until we can get money to be its own neutral field, right? And so money then vibrates at a higher dimensional frequency of more of like prosperity, which is also generosity. Prosperity, generosity, abundance, and that more of those words, right? And so then you take money and it's in the unified field and out of the duality and out of the polarization that keeps us battling and ping-ponging back and forth. Money's good and money's bad, right? Trauma triangle. Money's a perpetrator. Money's my savior. I'm a victim, So how do we, again, it's like this is stepping into a mature relationship with money. It's not evil and it's not your savior. It's not what your life should be hell-bent on, like it is not your mission to be wealthy, but it may be part of your evolutionary journey to really dive into this money theme and really chew on it and heal it. It may be in the cards that you are wealthy, but in and of itself, just to have a life purpose, just to have money when it has nothing to do with impact on the earth or service to others, and like that isolated goal is not like often not somebody's soul mission, right? So I really like, one thing that I do, and so people can try this, is I put money as a symbol in a field of pearlescent golden light, which for me is a very, very high frequency of neutrality and freedom and unconditional love. I saturate money, the symbol of money, in that field. I run it through my chakras and clear all old patterning and conditioning of money out that don't resonate at that frequency. Then I run that symbol and that light through my bank accounts, like through the digital numbers of my bank accounts at Redwood Credit Union, and I run it through all my relationships, my money agreement relationships with my students and clients and with my husband. I'll like run that money symbol at the higher unified field vibration through there, clearing my receptor channels, clearing my giving channels. So what is it to be authentically receiving and authentically giving and generous? That brings joy. That brings love. Then you're a magnet for more of that. Then you are a field of attraction for more prosperity. So
that's a great one. Thank you for speaking to that. I know that's a big one, especially in our activist circles and people trying to pioneer new social enterprises and businesses, and having that big wound of like thinking, money is evil, corporations are evil. That's a big one. Thank you for the suggestion. That's wonderful. I'm almost picturing, like, I don't know if you have it, but maybe at some point, maybe I'm like channeling an idea for you here. Make a guided meditation, a guided money, of the one you just described for people. Sounds wonderful. Well, how about you want to do one more?
Sure.
One more question, and we'll wrap it up. I think this is another great one too that I'm sure brings up lots of things for people. But from Lotus, her question is about when negative things are attracted to us, like a pattern of partners who ends up betraying us. Is this something that your training works on? And if so, what advice do you have for people who keep attracting painful reflections like that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, talking about a partner, but yeah, when those negative patterns keep showing up, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And because my graduate background is in counseling psychology as well, so there's also a psychological angle to that as well. It's all connected. So often with a repetitive pattern that is, you can often trace it back to an original wound, to an original event that catalyzed that pattern into being. And so that could be in this lifetime when you're very young. Patterns that repeat themselves, they don't just begin in adulthood as much. They usually begin further back in like the limbic brain, where everything is, all the original patterns and habits are recorded, and hardwired in a way. And so we have to kind of it's wonderful if you can identify the original moment, the original event. If it's beyond this lifetime, if you get an intuitive hit that's like, no, I came into this life with this pattern. Like my mom said I used to be anxious as a child or something. Okay, great. Like, how can you trace it back even further? Like, what is the original lifetime where this pattern originated from? There can be incomplete karma with another being that is trying to get resolved. There can be incomplete trauma from a past life or this life that's trying to be resolved. And so your unconscious is attracting, because we give off a field, like a magnetic field, that is full of, it's like a bandwidth and like energetic information waves, right? And in that is emotion and beliefs, emotions and beliefs. And so if we have this core original wound that is giving off a magnetic charge, right, a pulse of beliefs and emotions around being abandoned or betrayed and abandoned, then that is going to set us up to constantly attract situations or people that match that wound in their own way, or in a way that is going to help us play that out again. So it's going to keep happening unless you go to the original moment, the original event in this lifetime or a past life. And then you have an opportunity to clear it, to clear any contracts. It's like, there's so many details to it that I can't go into everything now, and with each person it's different as well. So I had an experience where I was going through over and over again this experience of feeling like when I called for help from the divine, that it wasn't there. It wasn't there. Like, how come God abandoned me? It felt like God would abandon me. And I'm like, wow. And I finally realized, like, that's like this miasm in my emotional body. It's a story, and I'm ready to heal this. I want to see the original lifetime where this came from. And boom, like out of nowhere, I got 1604 Africa, the Portuguese slave trade. Just like that, information, boom, boom, boom. I'm like, holy shit. So like in my meditation, I picked up my phone and I 1600 Portuguese slave trade, West Africa. There it was, like right there. The
Wow.
Portuguese ended their 400-year slave trade career in the early 1600s, the mid 1600s. And then suddenly this whole movie of a past life appeared where I was a man and I was pulled away from my village and I was put on a slave ship and I was, transferred across the Atlantic Ocean. And in the midst of that experience, I knew that God, that was the only time ever I'd ever felt abandoned by God. And we had a different, we had a very tribal perception of God. There were deities. They were very elemental based. We had, shrines to them, and we fed them, and it was very ancestor based too. But I felt abandoned by all the helpers of my people, abandoned. They didn't care about me. I actually ingrained in that moment of that lifetime and my death in that life that I was expendable and God wasn't going to show up for me. And I went through multiple lifetimes working through that wound to this lifetime where I finally remembered it and cleared that whole karmic cycle of belief and realized why, as a soul, I chose to learn that lesson through that many lifetimes. I got it, I completed it, and created a whole new pattern for that moment forward, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a chunk of work
Mm-hmm.
that you got to really sign up for that kind of deep work. It's good though. It's worth it. So worth it.
Yeah.
Awesome. It is.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I think I'm getting a little bit on here. Hear my voice, but thank you, Maria. It's been really wonderful to spend this time with you and connect. I feel like the energy of the call has kind of been picking up and up, and I'm like, oh, we could just keep talking for hours. There's so much more to unpack and everything. But we're out of time for now. So any kind of last words? I guess I want to remind people again, Maria's main website is sacredfuture.org. Really amazing, phenomenal stuff. And we'll probably, people saw the link to the free ebook, which will be in the email as well that we send people as a follow-up. So thank you, Maria. Do you have any kind of last closing words, thoughts?
I think I just want to feel like all of us together, that we're all connected and we really are all one greater consciousness waking up right now, with the earth and with the solar system. We really are in this incredible, we're poised right now to have an amazing impact on the future of our planet and the future generations. And I just want to encourage everybody to, do whatever it takes to face and break through illusion. All the illusionary stories and beliefs you have that aren't serving you. Do whatever it's going to take to free yourself. And that does include community. It does include community. You can't do it alone. That's why the grief ritual is so powerful, right? So, and thank you for being here. It's been a real honor. Thank you so much, Jay. This has been fun. Thanks.
My pleasure. Yeah, thank you. That is a great prayer to remind us all that we're all here together in one emerging consciousness, here to do some really great things on the planet. Thank you. I'm sure anyone who is attracted to this type of webinar, who comes in your kind of sphere, and all the people in the doing the permaculture world also, there's just we got our work cut out for us, and let's do it with joy and have a great time.
Yeah. Yes.
All right. Well, thanks everyone. So blessings on all of you who are watching this call live with us now, and just extending that blanket of gratitude and blessing out backwards, forwards, and sideways in time to people watching this recording in the future or wherever it ends up. So sending all a blanket of blessings and gratitude for all the good work everyone's doing all over the world. Keep rocking it.
Keep rocking it.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Signing off.
Thank you.
Bye.